You're listening to Nectar, sweet musings for your creative soul. And now your host, Stacey Maney.
Today on the show, I'm featuring a good friend, Amy Blair. Amy believes that creativity is a non-optional part of human well-being, and she loves helping people reconnect to their creative heart. And the drawing exercise that she'll lead you through in our conversation could not have been more perfect for the theme of the Awakening of Love retreat. So you will have a chance to draw yourself rooted in love and rooted in your creative power. So grab your art supplies, find a cozy spot, and enjoy. Welcome, Amy.
Thank you, Stacey. It's so nice to be here. It's so fun to be here with you.
Yes, I know. This isn't our first time.
No.
I still love our podcast interview where we were talking about creativity and crisis, and
yeah, that was a good conversation.
Yeah, and what we talked about for today, it almost feels like a continuation of that. Just kind of talking about creativity and what it means to be in that creativity and kind of what happens when you step out of it. But before we dive in, if you want to just share like what you're up to right now or, where you're at, and then we'll talk a little more.
So I'm Amy Blair, the founder of an online business called Creative Compass. And we are an online community for creative explorers. And what I love to do is help people find their way back to their creative hearts, particularly if they have sort of lost their way or lost connection with that part of themselves. And that was my own story. And so I feel a lot of camaraderie with those people who felt they had to step away or put their creative life on the back burner, or even just close it off entirely because life, all the things that happen in life. And then one day it's like we wake up and realize we aren't whole and well without that part of ourselves. And we get a little nudge to find our way back to it. So I love supporting people who are on that journey.
Yeah, I love that. And it's so funny because even as an artist, I find myself, I have 2 little kids. I know you have little ones too. And it's like creativity is the first thing sometimes that's like, oh, I don't have time for that right now. Or, it's not as important as the other things like the dishes and the laundry.
Right. It doesn't somehow get to that level of like when you're at the place where you're just getting through a day, which we all have phases of life, right? We all have seasons of life where that's where we're at. And it never quite rises to the top. And at the same time, we know how important it is for our souls and for our wellness. I'm a big believer that we aren't well as humans if we are not using our creative gifts. I think it's just such a intrinsic part of who we are. And I've seen that, time and time again with people who are just have this sort of nagging sense, like maybe they've worked on like their physical health and their nutrition and their, spiritual health, other aspects of their health. And there's still like this little nagging, like missing piece to the puzzle. And I really think that, we need to embrace all the forms of creativity as that piece, another piece in our human wellness.
Yeah, and what's coming up when you share that, I love how you said the creative heart before, and this whole experience is about love and awakening this love within us. I always see creativity as love in action. And yeah, so I guess my question for you is, how did it feel to be disconnected from that first? And then maybe what were some of the first steps that you took to get back into that creative space?
Yeah, I love the way you asked that because it was I always say it was a journey of a million baby steps.
Yeah.
We tend to in our culture, we tend to think it's like all or nothing. Like if I can't paint in my own studio for 3 hours every day, then why bother? But that's never real life for anyone I know, for most of us. And so I guess also the story, I'm trying to think of where the story starts.
Right.
I always want to go to, and we talked about this in the podcast interview when my daughter was born as sort of the crisis moment, the kind of where I drifted away. But if I'm honest, it started long before that. And I often share with my community that if you had asked me at 6 years old what I was going to be when I grew up, it was an artist, and there was no question about it. And then by the time I got to high school, I graduated high school without taking a single art class, not one. Because somewhere between 6 and 14, I had really internalized the message that, art was not of value. I was a good student. Good students didn't take art classes in my high school in the 90s. They took advanced bio and AP chemistry and, the things that we value a little bit higher in our mainstream culture. And so I took calculus and physics and, all those things, and not one single art class. So I feel like the drift away from my creative part started probably about in adolescence. And I think that's a common tale I hear from a lot of the women I work with. And, but it was always sort of running in the background. So I didn't become an artist. I became a teacher, an elementary school teacher. And that is a very creative career. It's not an artist, but there's a high level of creativity involved in teaching, especially teaching elementary school. And so I was using my creativity in a lot of ways still. And then when my first daughter was born, she came into the world with some high medical needs, and which we found out during my pregnancy. So that was sort of the point where the full crisis mode kind of came on. And I often say that my creative life was just swallowed up whole. The business of the day was, very narrowly focused, wake up, keep baby alive, sleep, sleep maybe.
Question mark. We'll just pencil that in.
And so there was no space. And I look back now and of course realize, like, I could, if I had the tools at that stage in my life to lean into my creativity, it could have been such a gift and such a support during that medical crisis with my daughter. But I didn't at the time. I was just in full fight or flight crisis mode, and I didn't know how to make space for that kind of self-care and support through creativity. So it just sort of disappeared. And it would sneak out. I know I've told you this story, Stacey, but so I have 3 daughters, and when they were young, I mean, anyone who's raised children knows when you're in that infant, toddler, young kids phase, it's just there's not a lot of breathing room if you don't really intentionally create it. And but every year on their birthdays, I would make this like overly elaborate birthday.
Same. I do the same.
And people would be like, "Oh, Amy, you should like open a cake business." And I'm like, I don't even really like baking.
Right.
I just needed an art project.
It's like the outlet.
Right. That was the only outlet I was allowing myself, because it still let me check the box of like being a good mom, making the fancy birthday cake, and getting a little creativity in. So and I'm in a very different season of life now, but the cakes have stuck because my kids like them, so they still request their birthday cakes.
I'm still in the birthday cake season.
Still making my oldest is 14, and she still requested a fancy birthday cake this year.
Of course, you set the bar so high now.
Right, you might be in it for the long haul. But, so actually, I remember this so clearly. The day that I brought my youngest to her first day of preschool, which was 8 years after my oldest was born. So I had this sort of 8 years of really intense, I was a stay-at-home mom full-time, years with my kids. And I dropped my daughter off at her first day of preschool. And so I had this like 2.5 hours where I didn't have a child needing my care. And that was more or less the first time that had happened in 8 years. I mean, you get little moments here and there, but with some regularity. And as soon as I had that little margin, that little bit of like me time, of a little bit of silence. I know your house is like, my house is like that all the time. That little bit of silence and stillness, that call to create came right back. It came right back in as if it had, and it was like, hello, like I've been here, been here all the time. You haven't been listening because you've been changing diapers.
Right.
And one of the first things I did was actually I started checking drawing books out of the children's department of our public library.
I love that.
I never had time to get to the grown-up side of the library. I had my friends with me all the time. And do you remember when you were a kid, was like how to draw dragons and how to draw race cars and animals?
And it's all related, right? It's like all the same process.
While my kids were playing with the toys in the library and, you know, looking at books and stuff, I would check out drawing books from children's drawing books. And so people might laugh at that, but you know, things that are, and I know this from my years of being an elementary school teacher, when things are sort of made for children, they get really clear and simple.
Yes.
It was exactly what I needed at that time. I needed something really clear and simple that could just give me a little bit of guidance.
Right. That's so beautiful. I love that. Yeah. What I also love that you're bringing up this point, you know, to anybody listening who's in this season of life. And I found the same. It's like the more that I can bring my children into it, or, you know, like I know Julia Cameron talks about artist dates, and I love the library, and I'll like, we're all going to the library, like we're gonna get some inspiration. But like find, you know, if you don't have that time right now, to find ways to interweave something that's feeding your creative soul, your creative heart, you know, interweave it into your day and what you're doing with your family.
Yeah. And yeah, totally bring your kids with you, because if you are in that intensive parenting stage of life and you're just waiting for the time when you can go by yourself. I mean, it's so nourishing to be able to go by yourself as well.
Of course.
Create things on your own. But when that's not an option, you know, again, we get into that all or nothing mindset. Like, yeah, well, an option. What can you do with your kids? Maybe it's out drawing books at the public library.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I love the library. And actually there's like one more part to this library story.
Go for it. Yeah.
I can keep telling. I can't remember if we talked about this on the podcast or not, Stacey, but so there was a book that I wanted, a grown-up book. And I was one day, and I don't remember if I maybe just, because my older two were in school by now, so I might have maybe just had my little one. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna run over to the grown-up side of the library real quick, grab a book, come back, it'll be fine. So I left my toddler daughter. So the library is like all one level, so I could see her. No one anyone getting concerned here. But I left my toddler daughter playing in the children's section, and I like ran as fast as I could over to the grown-up section, found the book I wanted, grabbed it off the shelf, and in my haste to be quick, I knocked another book off the shelf.
Oh,
can't make this stuff up.
Chill.
So I bent down to pick up the book that I knocked over unintentionally, and it was The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, which I had never heard of ever. And just on a snap decision, I was like, I'll take this one too. Like I left my kid unattended. I'll just take them both. And I ran. So I walked out of the library that day with The Artist's Way, having no idea what it was. I don't know if our audience is familiar with that book. It's like a game-changing book on having a creative life. And here's the part I will never forget. As I went to check the books out, you know, probably with like my baby here, and the librarian, you know, just making small talk, I'm sure, looked at the title of the book I was checking out and said, "Oh, are you an artist?"
Oh.
And I couldn't answer. Like I couldn't make an answer come out of my mouth. I couldn't quite say yes, and I couldn't quite say no. And this woman probably thought I was insane. I was like, I honestly don't remember if I finally like got an answer to her question to come out of my mouth, or if I just like grabbed my books and left. But I left with that question like really on my heart. Like, am I an artist? And I wasn't sure quite yet what the answer was. But it was like an opening back to my claiming myself as an artist.
Oh my goodness. I get like, it makes me emotional because for so many reasons, like I just, it's like that somebody, like some higher force had that book fall into your lap, right? And
you can't make that stuff up.
Right. And it's like, no matter how disconnected we feel, that's always right there supporting us in ways we don't even realize. And, you know, and this switching gears a little bit, but still connected. Yeah, I know we talk about, and you are so good at drawing the female body and the physical form. I guess what I want to speak to just for a minute with you is, when we're in this fight or flight mode, we have the tendency to jump out of our body as well, right? I think of like a yoga pose where you're holding it too long and you're like, just get me out of here. I'm not comfortable. And the power of taking a breath and coming back into your body. And I feel like that's so important for the creative process too. So could you speak a little bit? And I know this is one of the gifts too, is your coloring book, where you have all of these drawings with female form and just gorgeous feminine imagery. But yeah, could you speak to like what kind of brought you there and the physical part of it all being in your body?
Yeah. So shortly after my incident where the artist's way leapt into my hands at the library, I, there discovered the intuitive art, which were brand new words to me. I had never heard those words put together. But I knew, intuitively that was sort of the art world that I belonged in. I really wasn't interested in like going to art school and getting like really technically educated as an artist. Like I've got some basics, I've taken some classes, but I loved this sort of intuitive, expressive world of art. And I started looking around because things were online, but I was like, I love being in person with people. Is anyone here in Connecticut, in New England, is anyone teaching this like live? And I found this yoga and intuitive art retreat that a woman was running about an hour away from my house. And I was like, oh, I like both of those things, yoga and intuitive art. I should take her retreat. And so I went fully compartmentalizing those things as two different things. And we're going to do some yoga. Yoga's fun.
Yes.
We're going to do some art. Art is also fun. But that wasn't what it was. It was an integrated process where we did. So this woman was a yoga teacher and an artist, and we did like some yoga poses, and then went to our canvas and did a layer of painting. And then did some different poses and then went back to our canvases. So that was the aha moment for me, that retreat, that movement, embodiment, and art were actually connected. And it's a hard thing to describe if you have to experience it. Like it's totally experiential. Yeah. And now like my creative practice is 100% involves like connecting in with my body. Like I know when I make art without doing that, it's what I call head art.
Yes.
It's just like it comes out of my head. I don't know if that. And then so I like to talk about head art and heart art, right? Art that flows up and out from an embodied place versus the art that just comes from our head. And sometimes they look similar, but they don't feel the same.
Amen.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah, I can make a piece of head art that's pretty and sort of is a good approximation of my other art, but it doesn't have the energy in it. It doesn't, I don't feel anything when I stand next to it, that kind of, relationship with it. So, so embodiment is a big part of my personal art practice, for sure.
Yes.
And in terms of how did I start drawing female forms? Yeah, so like a lot of artists that I talk to and that I work with, that I meet in my community, drawing human bodies can be really intimidating. Faces, bodies, and for a long time I was intimidated. I had just like a story, like I don't draw people. People are hard. People are hard. I don't draw people. And I think like if we're all honest, that it's hard to draw people's story probably has a little less to do with like our technical proficiency as artists and a little more to do with our cultural conditioning and stories around bodies and female bodies in particular, and body parts that we're not sure we're allowed to draw or, so engaging with that was a way to sort of work through that conditioning and those stories and some of those cultural taboos and weirdness that we have around female bodies. So it's been a really healing practice. And I created that coloring book that you mentioned. It's called Feminine Forms. I actually created that during COVID. That was like my COVID lockdown project.
Right.
And I just started. So I'd been painting a lot leading up to COVID. And then suddenly I had 3 kids at home doing school and, like all of us did. And painting just wasn't an option. I didn't have the space. I didn't have the physical space. I didn't have the mental space. Every room in my house was either a classroom or an office. And, painting requires some focused attention. So I started drawing again, which was kind of back to the library books, right? It was kind of my first love, my first art love anyway. And, drawing has the advantage that you can pick it up and put it down, if your kids need lunch or whatever, whereas I was painting with acrylic paints and like I would just pour my paint out and then mommy, and the paint's dry.
Right.
The paint's dry in your palette and you don't even remember what you were painting.
Right.
So I found that drawing just was really supportive during that time because, like I said, I could pick it up, put it down. I could travel with it. I just needed a sketchbook and a pencil.
Yes.
I didn't need any materials. I didn't have to go to the store and buy anything, which was really important during COVID.
Yes.
And I look back now and see like the difference between sort of because I think it's fair to call that time of COVID crisis. It was a bit of a crisis time, but this time around, as opposed to the first sort of crisis stage that I lived through, I had the skills to lean into my creativity as to support my wellness and my mental health and everything. So drawing really became an important tool for me during that time, and I ended up with over 100 drawings that eventually turned into the coloring book that you mentioned.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I love that story. And now it's supporting other people as well. Like I just see it like rippling out beyond you, all this creative energy and this love that you were channeling. So
yeah,
that would be a good transition to the art practice you have. You can experience what Amy's talking about. And did you want to share a little bit about what we're going to create?
Yeah. So I'm going to lead a drawing activity today, which might not surprise you. And now I wanted to preface this because I know because I've been there. I know there are people out there who are already like, I don't draw.
Right.
I'm just going to do this one. I'm not a drawer. And there is, I don't know, there's something a little bit intimidating or almost, I want to use the word, like there's something a little like highbrow about like drawing is held in the art world, just like interesting standard. So I just want to assure everybody this is a very accessible activity. Anyone can do it. I'm going to guide you through a set of simple shapes. And we are going to create a female form. We're actually working with 2 of my favorite things in this image to work with in my artwork, which are female forms and trees. You can probably see the tree behind me.
Love that. Yeah.
And the reason I love working with both of those things is because you can't draw them wrong. Both human bodies and trees come in every shape and every size and every color and every dimension. Yours doesn't have to look like mine. If you look out in the natural world, no 2 trees look alike. There are every kind of tree you could imagine. And the same is true with, human bodies. No 2 are alike. So you really can't get it wrong. So the drawing exercise I'm going to lead today is called Rooted Woman. And it's going to be an image of a woman and a tree, and they're kind of like interwoven. So you can interpret it as a woman sitting by a tree, or it can be a little more integrated. She sort of becomes part of the tree. And don't get scared by drawing a form. We get to move through that today. And I just want to offer, like, if that's really uncomfortable, if drawing a female body feels really uncomfortable, just first of all, just approach it with, just be super gentle. We all have different lived experiences that have conditioned the way we feel about our own bodies in general, female bodies in general. So just move through it with gentleness. And also there might be an invitation there to get curious about, why does it feel so uncomfortable? What are the stories? They're probably not even your own stories. What are the inherited subconscious kind of stories that we all have that make drawing a female body feel uncomfortable? So that's just my invitation to everyone as we move through this drawing practice today.
Perfect. All right, we can get started.
Okay, so here we go. Welcome to our drawing practice for today. Again, this is called the Rooted Woman. And just a little bit about materials. You really basic here. So I'm just using a piece of paper and an ordinary pencil today. And I encourage you to use whatever you have. One thing you might want to consider is I am going to invite you at the end to bring in your favorite mediums for adding color and texture to the piece if you'd like, if you choose to. So you might want to just consider the type of paper you're choosing. If you love watercolors or you love mixed media, you might want to choose a nice heavy art paper. If you're just planning on drawing or maybe working with some colored pencils or an ink pen, then any paper will do, whatever you have in your sketchbook or even just lying around. So grab your paper, and I'm actually going to turn my paper a long way for this activity. There we go. You can see that pretty good. Okay, so before we get started, I just want to say again, I know that there may be some people out there who are thinking, I don't draw, drawing's not my thing, I'm an art journaler, I'm a painter, I'm a mixed media artist, and I just want to encourage you to keep an open mind, and I promise you, anyone can do this. I'm going to guide you through it, and we're just going to do some simple shapes that are going to then grow into our art piece. Also, we are working with a human form, but I just want to, again, reassure you, our goal here today is not to be like super realistic, okay? We're not doing hyper-realism. It doesn't need to look like a portrait. It doesn't need to look like a photograph. We're doing more a symbolic, getting the essence of a female form and a tree in our drawing today. Okay. So, and just remember moving forward, you really can't do this wrong. Trees and human bodies come in every shape and every size. Yours does not need to look like mine. So while I'm guiding you today, I just want to encourage you, as I always do, if you've ever done any art with me before, to listen inward and follow your own creative voice. So I will guide you, and if it feels supportive, you can follow along step by step with exactly what I'm doing. But if your own creative voice, your own muse comes through and wants to do something different than what I'm doing, absolutely follow your own muse, follow your own creative voice. You get to trust the way you're led in this activity today. Okay, so let's get started. I'm going to get started by finding roughly the center of my paper. Again, nothing needs to be exact here. We're just doing some sketching. We're just doing some drawing. But I'm going to come in about the center point of my paper and just sketch in a U sort of shape. And that is going to be our head. That's where we're starting with our woman, our rooted woman. And if you want, you can complete the oval and make a full oval shape, or you can just go with the U shape. I'm going to do that. Okay. And then our woman is going to be in a seated position, sort of like a cross-legged lotus yoga kind of seated position. So from our U shape here, I'm actually going to next draw a shape that resembles an upside down heart that doesn't quite come to a point. Okay. And don't get in your head about if it's perfect, if it's symmetrical, right? Bodies aren't perfect and bodies aren't symmetrical most of the time, right? So can you see the upside down heart that doesn't quite come to a point at the end? We could, continue the line and make the point, but we don't need it. Okay, next, under that shape, we're going to draw a circle. And this is going to be our women's belly, and depending on how you want to interpret this drawing, it could be like a pregnant belly or just, a nice round, soft belly area. I'm going to put that in. Our Earth Mother, rooted woman energy here. Okay. And then from there, from our circle shape, we're going to put in sort of an infinity sign. Does everyone know what that looks like? A sort of weaving, I'll just show you. Sort of like a letter 8, a number 8 turned on its side and stretched out. All right, oblong, come around here, reconnect in the middle. So we've got this sort of infinity sign movement here, okay? And that's the basic shape of our seated woman. There are some more details we're gonna add in. We are gonna give her arms, don't worry. And also, let's see what I wanna do next. You don't have to do this. You can just leave the legs sort of as is. Sometimes I like to add in like little feet sort of shape there, so you can see her feet. If you don't care for that, you can leave yours as is, all up to you. Okay, and I'm gonna come back up here to our sort of neck area, and I'm going to draw a sort of big oblong kind of oval shape that circles around here and then comes back up. Almost has like a teardrop kind of a shape to it. Circle around like that. And that's what we're going to use to put in our arms. Okay, so we've got our basic shape here. There she is. See, I told you that wouldn't be too hard, right? We've just got these basic shapes, an upside down heart, a circle, and an infinity sign. And then we put our sort of teardrop loop around it. Okay, from here, we're gonna sort of smooth it out and get a little more detailed. And again, this is where yours does not need to look like mine. If you feel called a different way or to add a different detail, follow your own creative voice, follow your own muse. So I'm just gonna come in here and sort of thicken this line to make arms. And in my drawing, her arms are gonna be sort of cradling her belly. Here, if you, in your mind's eye, you see her with her arms outstretched or holding something or lifted up, by all means, you draw your arms the way that you see them, the way that you feel like you want your arms. It does not need to look like mine. But if you'd like the support, you can follow along with me. So I'm not gonna get real fussy with my hands. The hands aren't really an important detail in this, and I often do this when hands are not like the focal point of what I'm drawing. I very often just do this sort of like, I call them mitten hands, or like lobster claw oven mitts, right? Where you just sort of have a thumb and then a fatter area where fingers might be. And if you want to go back in and add the details of individual fingers and things like that, absolutely you can do that. I'm just gonna keep it simple today. And I'm gonna a little bit just suggest like a neck and a connection between these two shapes here, a waist sort of. So I'm just kind of smoothing it out a little bit. Now, as we are right now, she is not clothed, okay? If that feels uncomfortable, by all means, you can draw clothes on her, and maybe there's an invitation there to explore, get curious about why that feels uncomfortable, that you have left her unclothed. That is totally up to you in your practice, in your exploration today. Okay, so here's our woman. We're gonna come up to the face. Now again, don't freak out. I know for a very long time, I had a fear of drawing faces. I had like sketchbooks full of faceless people, and I just had a story in my head that faces are hard. I can't draw faces. And then I finally learned like a really basic way to make a face and when worked through that fear. And again, we are not going for photorealism here. This is not a portrait. It is an essence kind of piece. We're capturing the essence of something. So I'm going to just show you a super, super simple way to add a face to a small drawing. If you have your own beloved methods for adding faces, please, again, follow your own process. It doesn't need to look like mine. But I'm just going to come in about halfway of my U shape here. And I'm just going to put in simply 2 little scoops. And her eyes are going to be closed. If you are intimidated by drawing faces, I highly recommend beginning with closed eyes. It just simplifies things a bit. If you are a seasoned pro at drawing faces and you see her with open eyes, go for it. Okay, then for a very simple nose, I'm gonna just put in another small scoop like that. And then on either side, I'm putting a little curved line, almost like parentheses, like closing something in really tiny parentheses. Okay. And then I'm going to come down and just make an upper lip, just that sort of stretched out letter M kind of shape that you're probably accustomed to for an upper lip. And I'm just going to suggest a lower lip with, again, a little scoop. Okay. Now, she looks too serious to you. You can sort of upturn those lines there to make her look a little bit more like she's smiling. That's up to you. Maybe you like her looking sort of contemplative. Maybe you want her to look a little more lighthearted. And I am going to put in eyebrows, just intuitively where they feel like they should go. And you guys, don't forget, the beautiful part of working in pencil is we have these amazing tools here on the other end called an eraser. If you don't like the way something came out, or you tried something and it doesn't seem right, you can erase it. You can try again. There is no rule that says you can't make changes, you can't change your mind. Maybe you made the arms like this and you're like, no, I don't like them. I want the arms reaching upwards, reaching outwards. I want them in prayer pose. All different, right? It's the beauty of working in pencil. We get to change our mind. Okay, I'm also gonna put in about the same, level as the eyes. I'm gonna put in just 2 little ears there. I often draw ears on my faces and then cover them up with hair anyway, so don't get too crazy about detailed ears. Okay, and that's it. That is our very simple face. If you want to make it more detailed, you can. You can just leave it like that. I might just add one more thing. I'm gonna put in a little line to suggest sort of like the crease of the closed eyes. Okay, and there she is. So she does not have hair yet, so that's where we're going next. Again, we get to do this really intuitive and really in your own style and your own practice. I will show you what I'm going to do. I'm going to come about, midpoint here. And I'm going to, in just a really free flowing, intuitive way, I'm going to bring a line down, all the way down. And this is actually going to become the root of our tree. When trees have like roots that stick out above the ground, that's kind of what we're going for here. Again, yours does not need to look like mine. And I'm going to come in on the other side and the same thing, just really intuitively. Don't get worried about, your line looking exactly like my line. I don't think that's even possible, right? Right, just bring that flowy line down, and I'm going to add a couple of these. So these are going to be our tree roots. And that'll make a little more sense in a minute. Maybe 2 or 3 on each side, depending on what looks right to you, your preference. Okay, and I'm going to come in and just sort of double these up so we get that tree root kind of look. All right, there's some roots. Again, make as many of these as you want. I'm gonna just complete sort of her top of her head here and maybe just drop another line. I'm gonna just interweave it like that. Maybe another root on this side. I don't really have a plan here. I'm just going intuitively with the root placement. Okay. From here, I'm actually going to come back to the bottom of my page. And just a little bit below her feet, I'm going to draw a heart shape. Because we need to root into something, right? I told you she is the rooted woman. We need to root into something. And today we are rooting into love. We're rooting into love. So she's got her heart here. And I'm just going to draw some roots extending from her feet. Or her legs, if you didn't draw feet, that's fine. And rooting us into this heart here, to this source of love. Maybe for you that feels connected to the earth, to a Mother Earth energy. Maybe it feels just connected to being grounded, being rooted, being connected to your ancestors, however that resonates for you. We're just rooting into love. Okay, so now we have to draw our branches. So you'll see that our woman is sort of interconnected with this tree, and you can interpret that when you bring in some color or some ink or however you want to finish this piece. You can interpret this as sort of a woman sitting in front of a tree, or you can really integrate them as one. So I'm going to come right up here to her hair, to the top of her head, and I'm just going to draw like, you know, two little curved lines like that. Okay. And from here, we're going to grow our branches. And again, this is a place where you can work really intuitively, really following your own voice. There is no need for yours to look exactly like mine. In fact, I don't suggest that. I don't suggest you try to keep track of where each and every little line I'm making goes. Just, you know what trees are like. And their branches spread out. And again, there is every kind of tree you can imagine. There are trees with flowy sort of branches, more angular kind of branches, thick branches, thin branches. You can't do it wrong. However you make your tree, there is probably a tree out in the world that looks like that. And if there's not, then you just invented it out of your imagination, which is also beautiful. So I'm feeling sort of these flowy, sort of snake-like branches today. I've drawn a lot of versions of this drawing, and they always come out different. The tree looks different, the woman looks different, her hair looks different. So, every way they look is beautiful. And I'm going kind of quickly here just for the sake of our time, but please feel free. This is a point in the project that can get really slow and meditative. And if you're watching this on a recording, do feel free to please use that pause button and give yourself as much time as you would like. See, I'm gonna add some little smaller branches as they get to the end. Again, I'm really working intuitively here. I don't have a plan. I don't have it planned out where these branches are going. I'm just sort of letting them fill the space in a way that feels good. Okay, we need a few more branches here, and that should about do it. And again, as I was saying, we get to change our mind. So if you step back and look at your tree and like one side has all the branches and one side not so much, we can go in, add, or erase, right? Always have our eraser on hand. Okay, so now, this is our basic sketch here. And now we get to tune into our tree. Okay, this is super fun. So what kind of a tree is your woman with here? Maybe it is a winter tree, which is sort of what we have now, this sort of naked, leafless winter tree, which feels really dreamy, really in tune with that winter dreaming time, that sort of cocoon sleeping dream space. Maybe that feels really supportive. Maybe it is a spring tree with buds, with blossoms, with some sparse leaves coming in. Maybe it is a full bloom summer tree bearing fruit. Maybe it is an autumn tree that has colored leaves falling. I'm a New Englander. We get all 4 seasons here. I feel really connected to watching the change of the seasons. So I love when I'm working with trees in my art. I love tuning into what season is my tree in, and that is really reflective. That can be really reflective of sort of what season of life we are in. Is it a productive, full bloom, outward focused kind of time, or is it more of an inward, dreaming, introverted kind of time in our life? So tune into your tree. I'm gonna just quickly add some leaves just to work through the exercise. And again, I'm just adding a simple leaf shape. Leaves come in all shapes. You don't have to draw individual leaves. You can use color to suggest leaves around it, whatever method of working with trees in your art that you like. And this is another part, again, I'm moving quickly for the sake of our time here, but if you are going to add individual leaves to your tree, that can get really slow and meditative and be a really beautiful part of the process. So as I'm adding my leaves here, I'm just going to talk to you about where you can take this practice next. So this will be, I'm going to leave you here at the pencil sketch phase, but I really want to invite you to bring in whatever color medium you love. If it's paint, watercolors, colored pencils, markers, grab your kid's crayon box. If you are a mixed media person, then I know you have that bag of mixed media stuff, right? Or box or closet. Right, you know you do, of all your mixed media things that you like to play with. What can you bring in and make her your own? Bring some life to her. I think I'm probably going to use colored pencil today, but that is where you get to make her your own. And I would absolutely love to see your rooted women. So if you are a Facebook user, first of all, I will be popping into Stacey's Facebook group during this retreat and hopefully connecting with you there if you feel called to share your artwork. I also have a free private Facebook community. It is called Creative Compass. We are a supportive group for creative explorers. We love art shares. You are not going to be criticized in that group. It is not, we don't share our art for critique. We share it for support on our creative journeys wherever we are on them. So I would love for you to find the Creative Compass Facebook group and hop in and share your rooted women there. I would love a river of rooted women all together. What a beautiful sight that would be, and see where you took it, how you made it your own. If you had to move through any resistance working with a human body form, all of those things, I would love for you to share. So I just want to invite you into that. Okay, so this is where I am going to leave you today with a finished pencil sketch of our seated woman with the tree. I can't wait to see where you take it next. And the other thing I want to just offer you as a suggestion, I love the combination of visual art and writing. So if you have a journal or a sketchbook or an art journal where you work with both images and words, and if you don't, you can just grab whatever paper you have on hand. I would love to invite you to just sit with your rooted woman and see if she has a message or some wisdom that she wants to share with you, maybe about your own practice of staying rooted in your life right now, or maybe something completely different. And if you've never done anything like that, if that sounds a little weird, getting a message from your art or asking a question to your artwork, just invite you to have an open mind, give it a try, and see what you like. See if you like doing that. It's a beautiful addition to your creative practice. Okay, so she is finished, and I can't wait to see what you created today.
All right. Wow. That was so beautiful, Amy. Thank you.
It was my pleasure. Thank you. I hope that everyone, who felt a little bit of fear towards drawing or towards bodies or towards faces, all of it, I hope you were able to just gently walk through that.
Yeah. And it's funny, when I started learning how to draw the human form, I would just be drawing and it would turn into trees. So they just go together so well, the two of them. And you can just continue to create tree figures, or you could have a whole collection of these drawings. And before we conclude here, Amy, you also have a free gift that you're offering today. Could you share a little about that?
Yeah, so it's a fun one. I hope people enjoy it. So you're going to get a free printable. I call them flow cards, and basically they are cards. So you just start by printing them out and cut them out, and then you get to customize them so that they are your own, and there's some instructions to help support you through that. And then what you have is sort of a mini, almost like a deck, almost like if you've ever worked with an Oracle deck or something like that. And they just have, they each have a little tip for a way to get back into creative flow if you feel stuck, or, like the creativity just isn't flowing on this day. You can just close your eyes, pick a card from the deck, and get a little tip on how you can maybe shift that energy and get back into your creative flow.
Yeah, I want this like right on my desk so that I can choose that. Because
That's where I keep it.
right. Yeah.
I keep mine right at my easel.
Oh, yeah, I love that.
Yeah,
Oh my
for
gosh.
sure.
Thank you so much, Amy. I just see us all like seated and rooted in this tree that is our creativity. And then we get to move forward from that place. I have so many chills. So thank you for interweaving that into our circle.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Stacey. This has been so much fun. Always so much fun to sit down with you and chat, and it's a beautiful retreat that you're creating. I know that your viewers are going to get a lot out of it.
Thanks for listening to Nectar. Go to staceymaney.com and subscribe to get show updates, opportunities to go deeper, and inspiration sent straight to your inbox.